So the other day, I did my top 10 most favorite movies of 2022. Now it's time to get negative and talk about my top 10 worst or most disappointing movies of 2022. I do want to start this off, though, by saying that I kind of screwed up a little bit on my previous video, my top 10 favorites, because I completely forgot about the black phone, which would have ended up on that list. I would have scrapped one of the others, maybe the Atom Project, maybe Nope, I'm not sure. But the black phone's definitely in my top 10. The screw up happened in Letterboxd. Well, they've got it as a 2021 movie. So when I looked back through all the movies I'd seen in my Letterboxd history for 2022, the black phone is not there. So it just completely slipped my mind. Anyway, yes, that's an adjustment to my top 10 list. I don't know where it would land, but it would be in there. Okay, let's proceed with top 10 worst movies. Now, I've tried to put them in some sort of order based on least offensive to most offensive. And by offensive, I mean how upset they made me. So some of these movies aren't necessarily like maybe, people could debate and argue, because obviously this is all a matter of opinion, but people could debate and argue this was a really well done movie and whatever. Maybe it was technically, cinematically with the editing, maybe the acting was fine, but for whatever reason, I either was unimpressed to the point that I actually disliked it to different degrees, or I had a very extreme reaction of dislike. Also, some of these films, I might have been kinder to them in the beginning, but as time has gone on and I've thought about them more, my perspective about them has changed a little bit. So you might notice that with some of the ones on this list. All right, let's begin with number 10. 3,000 Years of Longing. This film wasn't necessarily horrible, but what happened is it started off with, it was pretty intriguing. It drew me in. I felt like it started off with great promise. And then there was this point in the movie where things shifted, and it felt like the shift was so abrupt, and I didn't feel like we'd really adequately been guided there by the narrative of the story. And so when this thing happened, it fell flat for me. It did not work, and that's when the movie kind of started to lose me. I mean, don't get me wrong, the acting was great. Idris Elba was fantastic in here, as he pretty much always is, and she was fine too. The visuals were fine. Most of the story with regard to the main storyline of these two people takes place in this one room, but a lot of it's told in flashback. That was fine. But then, like I said, just that narrative, that shift with what happened between the characters, I'm just like, what, this felt like, it just felt like it kind of came out of left field, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. And so, yeah, because I walked away from this with more of a negative feeling than a overwhelmingly positive feeling, that's why this one ended up on my list. All right, number 9, Firestarter. Oh my gosh, this one could be ranked higher. But like I said, this is not really in certain orders, except the closer I get to the top, obviously, the more vehemently I disliked the film. Okay, Firestarter started off decently-ish. I liked the special effects with how they showed her being able to use her power. It's kind of cool. But then about halfway through or so around there, I can't remember exactly when the moment was, it just felt like it was veering in this very poorly executed direction, and the ending felt, or the set piece at the end, or the location at the end, felt like it was nowhere near how extravagant the shop was in the original movie. This big estate, all these places, and it was just grand and everything, and this would just look like this little old some sort of set they slapped together in a warehouse or something. It was just, it didn't look good. And then some of the things that the actors, or not the actors, some of the decisions that the characters were making just felt nonsensical, and It was something that started off with some promise, but then it just completely crashed and burned at the end for me. So yeah, I definitely had to put this one on my list. I was not happy with this movie for the most part. Number 8. Interceptor. This movie did not make it to the big screen. It was a Netflix movie. I watched it because the premise of it seemed pretty interesting. It's a girl, she's in the military. I can't remember what military she was in, but she's in the US military. She gets sent to this place where they have like it's like supposedly only 2 places that the US has where they have these interceptor missiles that can shoot down an incoming nuclear bomb or something like that. And she's on as you can see, it's like, looks like this rig in the ocean. She's on it, and then these people come and they want to take over. And so it just becomes her fighting off all these people. She's locked herself in a room where the codes are or where the things are. She's locked herself in an important place. I never did a review for this for the channel. There were parts of it that were interesting and kind of suspenseful, but then eventually it got to the point where it was so over the top and ridiculous, the stuff that she was able to do. And yeah, she was supposed to be badass and kick-ass and everything, but her character was the type of strong female lead character that was poorly written. And the narrative of the girl power thing seemed to be pretty heavy-handed throughout, but especially towards the end. And my eyes were rolling by the time some of this stuff was happening at the end. I was like, oh yeah, sure, right. It was ridiculous, and she wasn't that great of an actor. Now, this is Chris Hemsworth's wife, and I think he produced the movie or something. He had some sort of hand in it, and so he made a cameo appearance in here. There were multiple scenes with this cameo character of his, and I was like, okay, we all know why you're in here, but it just felt kind of... that felt just shoehorned in just because, and it felt kind of silly, and a story that showed promise, it just didn't work for me because the writing of the character was weak, and the heavy-handed narrative of girl power, and she's so strong and she can beat and take down all these guys, and she alone saved the day, just like, okay, this is just no, I can't. So yeah, that's why this one ended up on my top 10. All right, number 7. The Invitation. This was a movie that made a big mistake in revealing pretty much everything in its trailer. And so when you go there, you know exactly what you're getting ready to watch. And it's the premise was pretty interesting. I mean, that's what drew me to want to go see it. But it felt flat. It just felt so generic and bland and just so dull. And it was disappointing because of that. Now, I had thought I would enjoy it more. I can't remember what I had seen right before I'd seen this. It might have been 3,000 Years of Longing. Because I had seen Beast, 3,000 Years of Longing, and then maybe it was this. And I remember that I liked Beast. It wasn't the best movie ever, but I liked Beast. And I remember thinking that I liked Beast better than 3,000 Years of Longing. Well, I can't remember the order. Yeah, I thought it was Beast I saw. Whatever. I saw 2 Idris Elba movies pretty much back to back. One week, one the next. And then I'm going here and I'm thinking, well, hopefully, surely I'm going to like this one so much more than the other 2. And no, I absolutely didn't. Out of all 3 of those, Beast was the best, even though that was a less than stellar film. So yeah, pretty weak movie, and just not, unfortunately, what I was hoping that it would be. Number 6. Blacklight. Oh, I made no secret of the fact that this film was not very good. It was just... if you want to see any more in-depth explanations about any of these, I'll try to remember to put review links for them, or you could just go search my channel if you're interested on the off chance. But this movie was just... it felt so... it had to have been the screenplay. I mean, Liam Neeson, he plays kind of the same sort of character in a lot of his movies. and there's really no different here, but it felt very another bland, another mediocre, actually not even worse than mediocre. It just wasn't executed very well, and it was really disappointing to see him reducing himself to playing this type of role. And I mean, I love Liam Neeson, but this was certainly, I felt like a waste of his talent. And the other movie that I saw him in later, called Memory, wasn't, again, the best movie ever, but that one didn't end up on my list because there was much more about it that was done better than this movie was. The premise was more interesting to me, and the way the movie played out was just executed on a better level than this was. Also, the director, can't remember what he's done before, but he's done other films that I knew made him a decent director. And so I had more optimism about it going into it. There were some parts where it got kind of shaky in some areas and just wasn't, but overall it was just so much better than this very disappointing film. He's got another film that's supposed to have come out, but it hasn't showed up yet. And it's a oh my gosh, what is it? It's a Philip Marlowe movie. I think, isn't that the character's name? He's like a detective or something. I think Humphrey Bogart played that character in a movie. It's like, where he plays like this detective. And that one seems like it might actually be pretty decent, but I think it was supposed to come out in November or December, and it has not yet, and I have no clue if it's going to. I would like to go see that film. Anyway, so yeah, Blacklight, very disappointing. Okay, number 5. Morbius, yeah. I didn't hate this movie with a passion. So the main reason that it's higher on the list than some of the others is because it should have been so much better. And it felt like Jared Leto's performance in here, or the way it was carried out, it had a similar sort of disappointing feel that Christian Bale's performance in Terminator Salvation had. And we were talking about that last night on the live stream I had last Tuesday in December. By the time this goes up, it will be, I don't know, a couple days from now. But I had mentioned that I had such high hopes because I felt like he was a perfect casting. And I felt like that he was a great casting in this role. But then when you watch it, it was just like somehow they could not make it click. And that was the case here. And also, I didn't like the character of Matt Smith. I felt like he was over the top and ridiculous. And some of the things that the characters did was ridiculous. And it just felt so stale. And it made me kind of annoyed at whoever in the world put this thing together, because while there were cool moments in it, some cool visuals, which was mostly stuff that they showed in the trailer. I mean, it felt like the trailer was put together better than the movie was. Yeah, I think this movie did make my top 10 most anticipated, and it was just, no, just didn't work. I mean, I don't hate it to the same degree that I did, like, let's say, The Green Knight, which made me totally pissed and I actually wanted to leave. I didn't actually want to leave during this film, but it just did kind of feel like a waste of my time. It just felt very meh. So yeah. Number 4. Here we go. Prey. Okay, this movie. This was one of the movies that I was kinder to in my initial review, even though I had a lot of negative stuff to say about it. And I was talking about how I was saying, I think this was a movie where I said something along the lines of referring to the fact that I was saying a lot of negative stuff, but yet it's at the same time, it wasn't a bad movie. And I didn't want you guys to think it was a really bad movie, even though I was saying all this negative stuff. But as time went on afterwards, I have grown to like this movie less and less, to the point that now when I think about it, it just annoys me. And one of the main reasons is because there was so much hype going into this. And I went into it with an expectation that it was going to be really close to like the first Predator. And I was seeing people saying things like, oh, it's the best Predator movie ever, like better than the first one. Yeah, no, it's not. And her character was not written very well. She didn't start off being Mary Sue-ish, but there was definitely this kind of silly narrative of, you know, she wants to be a hunter and she's a girl, but she wants to be a hunter. And it's like, you know, that sort of thing just did not fly in real life back then. Like back in the day, if she had expressed this sort of sentiment, it'd be like, yeah, no, they'd be nipping that in the bud like right away. So just off the bat, the scenario that was set up for her character was just ridiculous. And then, even though she didn't necessarily start off being a Mary Sue with regard to her hunting capabilities, because it did show that she failed and she sucked, actually, she wasn't any good at it. She was good at things like she would go out and, you know, get these things and stuff in the woods or whatever, because that was what a lot of the women did. They would go and they gather the stuff like that. But then when they manipulated the plot to where something happens to her brother, and then she has to step in and do stuff. It was like, then all of a sudden she becomes this unbeatable Mary Sue. She takes on this camp of like, whatever these guys were, hunters, whatever. She takes on this entire group of guys on a foot that had just been injured in like an animal trap, a bear trap, you know, one of those things. She takes them on, acting like she felt nothing in her foot at all, that she was able to do all these crazy fighting, jumping over them and doing Black Widow type stuff and taking them all down, even though she had a foot that had been mangled by this thing. And then she takes on the Predator, and there's like no real, like, she just very easily takes care of him because she's so smart. And something that really bugged me about it was how when these flaws would be pointed out, people were often met with, oh, you're just a misogynist. You know, you just don't like strong female, you know, that sort of, I'm wound up about it, you can tell. But that sort of ridiculous comeback whenever people are trying to point out actual clear issues with something. And I feel like the reason this thing got so much love, really, from official critics and a lot of audience members, is because of the setting and the people involved, and just because. Not because it was actually a really, really good story. There were definitely some good parts about the story. I liked the scenery. I liked the premise, just the idea of one of the earlier Predators maybe he was like the first, and of course, a woman defeats the first one. Okay, sure. But so it had that going for it. But these things that were happening just kind of, it diminished the overall enjoyment of it. And then, of course, the reaction of some people about it, acting like it was the best thing ever. And like, she just did such a magnificent job. Looking back on it, after I rewatched it, saw it a second time when one of my brothers came into town, and she wasn't, I don't think she was that great of an actor in here. So I just felt like this movie was overhyped. It's overrated. And I don't feel that it has the substance to support all of this praise that was heaped upon it. And so, because I have mostly negative feelings attached to this movie now, that's why it ended up on my list, and especially closer to number 1. Okay, number 3. Bodies, bodies, bodies. Okay, this movie, it was fine as far as, you know, the technical stuff. The actors were fine. The story was interesting. The problem for me was, I know it got critical acclaim, and I understand what it was trying to do. It was a satire or satirical take on the idiocy of today's generation, today's social media obsessed generation, and the fakery, you know, and the virtue signaling type of crap that a lot of people do. And I get that. And I like that it was doing that because, yeah, a lot of this stuff was pretty accurate as far as how these people were portrayed. I know a lot of it was over the top just because, you know, it was a movie and everything. But the problem with it was almost everyone, with the exception of the guy all the way over there to the far right, I hated all their characters. I didn't like them. Even the main protagonists of the story, these two chicks in the middle here, I did not like them. And if you're watching a movie and you can't stand pretty much all of the characters, they're so unlikable to you. For me, that affects my enjoyment of the film, and that's definitely what happened here. By the time the movie was over, I was pissed because really none of them had redeeming qualities about them, and I couldn't stand them. And so because I felt such hostility towards the characters, I know you were supposed to, it didn't work the way I think the director or the writer or whatever it was intending. And some people loved it for that exact reason. They loved the messaging so much that they loved the whole film. And while I appreciate the messaging, the fact that there were pretty much no redeeming characters in here, no characters that were somebody that I actually liked, it made me hate the whole film. So that's why this one's number 3. I mean, like, I really was just, I was very negative about this film in my review too. Okay, number 2. Halloween Ends. This movie made my top 10 most anticipated. And boy, oh boy, was I mistaken to feel any sort of optimism when I went into it. I had started to feel optimistic about it after seeing one of the trailers, like the teaser. And I just had this good feeling about it. And that was a big mistake. Because this movie was such a disappointment. And while there are certain parts about it that were positive enough, and like I mentioned in my review and in my live stream discussion and in my other review with Arturo, I was with this film up until a certain moment. And then when this thing happened, the movie lost me. And I started to just not care. Like to not even care what was going to happen, like with Laurie and Michael. And while I liked the outcome of the movie, the journey to get us there was so ridiculous. And it really, like, I got so pissed at David Gordon Green because I felt like he had misled the fans, starting with kills. I felt like I was losing confidence in his ability to pull off this trilogy. And the direction they went with this movie was so nonsensical, and it felt like it was so disrespectful to the franchise and to the fans and to the iconic characters of Michael and Laurie, especially Michael, even though he was a baddie. It felt like the way his character was treated was so ridiculous. And I saw someone recently made a comment about how, well, people were just upset because, you know, Michael's not here anymore. No. I mean, I wanted him to die. And I'm glad that he died. But that's not why I'm pissed at the movie. I'm pissed at the movie because it was so horribly written. And it was executed so terribly. And the stuff that they did with his character that made no sense at all, what didn't fit at all with the character of Michael Myers that we had been told about for the past 40 years. And then another thing that was frustrating was how the fans who were upset about it, they were being demonized. And, you know, we were told, though, well, we just weren't true fans. I had someone tell me, you know, maybe you need to look in the mirror and kind of think about what type of fan you really are, or whether you're a true fan or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it was that gist. It was that you're not a true fan sort of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, I was watching Halloween before you were probably even born. So don't tell me I'm not a true fan. Like I don't question the fact that people like that, like he's probably, I know he's a true fan. He loves the franchise, right? And he loves everything about the Halloween movies, and that's fine. But that also doesn't mean that people that don't love every single Halloween movie that we're given, that don't lap it up with glee, that doesn't mean we're any less of a fan either. And being personally antagonistic towards people who just have a different viewpoint about their appreciation of a movie, to me is ridiculous, makes no sense, and I just don't understand that sort of mentality, for one thing. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting pretty snipey in this review. I didn't mean to do that, but just thinking about this it's kind of brought back all those feelings of annoyance, and I'm still really annoyed when I think about it. This movie almost ended up in my number one slot. There's only one reason it didn't, and that's because I didn't seriously think about leaving the movie like I did with number one. So I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna stop ranting about Michael Myers and Halloween and David Gordon Green and caustic fans who get angry at other fans. I'm going to stop talking about that right now, and I'm going to proceed to number one, which anyone who's seen any of my reviews probably knows what it's going to be. But the main difference separating 2 and 1 is that when I saw number 1, Moonfall, I seriously thought about walking out. Moonfall is my 2022's version of The Green Knight. The Green Knight ended up in my number 1 spot of worst films of 2021. Moonfall, and I started off the year with Moonfall. It was one of the first movies I saw this year. And I was thinking, wow, I'm not getting off to a good start with movies in 2022. And it feels like the entire year has sort of been kind of meh as far as movies. I mentioned that in my other video. Even though I did find some that I enjoyed, I didn't feel super passionate about a lot of them. And it was a bit hard to come up with that list. It wasn't too hard to come up with this list. Let me tell you, I didn't have to think about it too hard. And in fact, I had some others that I would have added to it. I thought about putting Uncharted on here, but I didn't because... And I toyed with the idea of Black Adam, but the thing is, I didn't hate Black Adam. I wasn't in love with it, but I didn't hate it. And I didn't hate Uncharted. I just wasn't in love with it. And these films on this list, they generate more negative emotion in me than the others that I've seen. So that's why they ended up being on here. But Moonfall, it was so asinine. And it just got dumber and dumber as the movie went on. And so just, I can't even adequately put into words how terrible this movie is. And you know it's bad when you think about leaving a movie so you can go work. And that's exactly what I thought about doing, just like with The Green Knight. And when I started having those thoughts, I said to myself, Self, I think this movie's going to end up number 1 on my top 10 most hated movies or worst movies of the year. Unless, of course, something else comes along that I hate even more and seriously want to leave the theater. And you know a movie has completely and utterly failed when you don't even want to get the most out of the money you paid for a seat. And this film, I'm just like, Halle Berry, what were you thinking? So yeah, this movie was awful. Have I said that enough? Someone, I think it was Simon, he said, I saw Moonfall, and I'm paraphrasing. I saw Moonfall. I don't want to talk about it. Like he was scarred because of the experience. And it surprises the heck out of me that this movie has a rating as high as 50-some% with the audience. Now, I know, like I've said, like I've said, when I was talking about number 2, Halloween, I don't like it when fans are snarky with each other about differences of opinion. So when I bring up the fact that I'm surprised that it has such a high rating with the audience scores, I'm not saying that with any sort of negative commentary towards those people who did enjoy it, because there are some people who enjoyed it. But it just surprises me that there's that many people that enjoyed it. Oh my gosh, this movie. Oh, Lord. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And I'm hoping that 2023 gets off to a better start. I almost bought a ticket to see Megan, and now the tickets aren't available to buy anymore. I don't know why that happened, but I'm not sure. I kind of feel like with Megan, you know, I'm getting a little leery about movies that come out in January. So I don't know how good this movie's really going to be. I mean, I'm sort of interested to see it, but at the same time, I'm really leery. I mean, I kind of feel like I should just swear off going to see movies at all in January. I have bought a ticket to see the upcoming M. Night Shyamalan film in February. That one does look intriguing. Please let it be decent. Oh my gosh. It's just like... Why is it so hard to write decent? It really feels like, as a whole, the quality of storytelling in the entertainment industry has gotten so much weaker than it used to be 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years ago. And I don't get why it's so difficult to write a solid story. And it really feels like Hollywood just keeps making really poor choices when it comes to the writers that they hire. And I don't know why they keep doing this. It's a shame. I feel like it's a waste of people's time and money and energy and effort. And as someone who loves to watch movies, and I've seen plenty of terrible movies, it's kind of frustrating that it feels like there's more often movies that are very lackluster or just downright terrible. So, yeah. Doing this video has actually put me kind of in a foul mood. I feel like I need to go cleanse my palate by watching something good. No, I don't know. It's late. It's already tomorrow. I started off yesterday and now it's tomorrow. So I need to wrap this up. I probably ranted for so long. This is probably at least 30 some minutes. I hope not. But anyway, the next video that I film is going to be my most anticipated for 2023, and I haven't completely gotten a full list together. There's a few titles that I've noticed that look interesting, and so I'm going to put them in some sort of order and do a video for that, but that probably won't go up until very early January, like maybe early next week. So anyway, this is probably the very last video that I will make for 2022, and in the meantime, I hope everyone has a wonderful New Year's Eve and New Year's Day celebration, and we'll see you next year. Bye.